think I've met everyone before, but I'll just say it again. Welcome to our CAG Devon's first green drinks, something that we hope will become a regular thing in the calendar, even when we are all allowed to go out and see each other face to face as well, because it's really great to be able to get folk from across the two districts together without all having to get into our cars and travel too far. I appreciate it's not quite the same as being in the room with one another, but there are advantages that come with doing the online stuff. So it's great to have you here. As I say, it's the first green drinks. We're hoping to be running one of these maybe every other month. We'll see how it goes. And it's really an online space for us to catch up with one another briefly. And then the idea is that we focus in on a particular topic around sustainability on each session. And so with that in mind, for this session, we're delighted to have Martin with us from the Community RePaint Network, who's talking about all things paint, and I'm sure it's going to be a very colourful talk. I'm going to stop the rubbish puns at that point. So yeah, if anyone's got any ideas for other topics that you'd like us to cover in green drink sessions, just pop them in the chat. And yeah, we're certainly open for exploring different ideas, different aspects of sustainability and waste reduction and reuse. So yeah, we'd love to hear your ideas. I think, I'm hoping that you all saw the email that I sent out earlier today with what we were going to cover through this evening. A few nods. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I think one of the things that we're really keen to do, particularly in these weird and wonderful times where we don't get to get together too much, is to just have a bit of a check-in with everybody from around the patch and see where you're up to, and just to get a bit of an idea about something positive you've been up to over the last few months, or something positive that you're planning to do. So who would like to kick off? I'm roaming around the screen and I'm going to pick on someone. And I'm going to pick on Lucy because she's smiling beautifully at me. So Lucy, would you like to kick off just with a bit of a, well, an introduction? You've already put on your tag where you're from, which is great, and then something positive that you'd like to share about.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Lucy from Sustainable Bradninch, which is a small, very small town in mid Devon. And I just got my drink, which is very nice.
Cheers.
What have we been doing? So we've had a couple of green drinks and things, but the most exciting thing we're doing at the moment is setting up a community food shed along the lines of a community fridge. So we've got a fridge in it, and it's a shed behind someone's house on 4th Street in Bradninch, which will be open to all. It'll take food waste from several local supermarkets and places next to places like Riverford and Shillingford, so full of quality vegetables as well as supermarket waste food. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be open in about 2 weeks.
That's brilliant. That is really exciting news.
Yeah.
And we've had quite a lot of interest amongst existing CAG groups and from potential new CAG groups over this period of this year, wanting to do exactly the same. So that's fantastic news, Lucy. Brilliant. Oh, so we look forward to pictures of the grand opening and brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that. Esther.
Oh, right. The Waste Action Group, I'm Sustainable Crediton. The Waste Action Group of Sustainable Crediton, I must admit, has sort of fallen apart, really. A bit negative. So we haven't really done anything much this year, even though we were going to do some close swaps. Maybe they're going to happen next year. If possible, they will. What Sustainable Crediton has been focusing on is the pollinator project in Crediton. And because it's outdoors, we've done quite a lot of work with local people to get pieces of land where we can grow bee-friendly, insect-friendly plants. And that's, I know it's not waste, but that's what we've been concentrating on because it's outdoors. And we've got one really successful one going already. And we've got possibilities of 3 or 4 other plots that we're still working with, and Mid Devon District Council drag their heels anyway. But anyway, we're getting there, but it takes a while. But one of our plots is looking fantastic, and we're hoping to do a session with the local paper and get it in the newspaper fairly soon. So things are sort of jogging along, but not as the waste bit is fallen by the wayside a bit. So there we are. I don't know when that's going to happen again, but it will at some stage. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. The pollinator project, I just love the idea of that. And yeah, as you say, it's a great one to be doing, particularly at the moment outdoors. And yeah, so it's such an important piece of work. I think we're finding with a lot of the groups, Esther, that you're not alone in terms of people coming and going within groups, and particularly over this last year, having, you know, other challenges to deal with particularly through lockdown, and a lot of volunteers shielding. But we are hopeful, confident that, you know, as time goes on and we learn different ways to live with the new circumstances, that people will be coming through again to volunteer. So,
yeah.
And yeah, if we can help in any way in, you know, advertising things for you, having a chat through some ideas with you, then we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, yeah, good.
Okay, I'm moving to Neil in Tiverton. Hi.
So I'm from Sustainable Tiverton. We have been keeping going with a few of our events through this year, though most have been on hold since March. So Rerouted, which is our food waste sharing group, has continued going. The monthly cafe that we hold has been put on hold, obviously, but we have started up a takeaway to replace that. So we do that once a month. We've continued to collect waste food from supermarkets and other places, and distribute that mainly to the food bank, which was very busy during lockdown. So some of our other groups, we've had discussions about restarting. So that's the Repair Cafe, Tiverton Tree Team, and some discussions about cycling and encouraging people to cycle more. So we've had discussions about those, but not actually organised any events. A couple of other sort of events that Sustainable Tiverton organises, which one of those is apple pressing during the autumn. Mm-hmm. So we have, or are in the process of organising one for next month. So.
Excellent. Lovely. So again, it's kind of some seasonal things coming through there. The apple pressing outdoors, the tree planting. I've seen some of the posts from the Tivy tree planters, you know, that they're plotting and planning kind of the autumn winter campaign. So yeah, it's finding ways to work within the parameters and the ever-changing, it feels like, guidelines. And I know we've had a lot of conversations internally in terms of, you know, the guidance that comes out and interpreting that, and the, you know, the best ways to advise the groups that we're working with. And I know Claire, some of the risk assessments for the rerouted takeaway and the apple pressing event and things like that. So yeah, it all takes time, doesn't it, getting your head around it all. So it's great that there's some things in the pipeline in Tiverton. So thanks for that share, Neil. Brilliant. Vanessa.
Hi.
Hi.
From Dawlish Against Plastic. I suppose the biggest things we've been doing are our story competition for children. I can't remember the exact title now of our story, but it was basically children writing about looking after our world. And we had an online Zoom prize giving with the mayor, and it all went quite well. And the children were thrilled that they'd won something. So yeah, that was good. And we've just launched our new Beach Clean Club, because we wanted to try and avoid what happens generally at beach cleans, is that everybody comes and meets up and goes off with their equipment after having signed in. So we wanted to try and avoid that. So we've made up a Beach Clean Club, which we've just launched. And we've got a member already. We have had some interest. So hopefully that will gradually grow as people get to know about it. We've got a fair amount of equipment that we can lend out. So if they join the Beach Clean Club, they can have some of our equipment for a small fee, which they will get back when they finally give the equipment back. And it just means that people can go out on their own, aware of the risks, or with their family, and it saves us all having to meet up. So that's the general idea. I'll have to send you all the paperwork. We have got it all. So yeah, that's mainly, well, that's the things we've been concentrating on, because our Go Green Fest went. So yeah, the story competition was the thing we wanted to save from that, or felt we could save.
Brilliant. Great, thank you, Vanessa. And I think that's, the Beach Clean Club is a lovely example of how groups have adapted to still be doing good stuff within, the confines of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. So it's brilliant. And likewise, the rerouted cafe offering a takeaway service, again, another way of kind of showing innovation and looking for other ways to achieve the same end whilst doing things slightly differently, which is brilliant. So it's really good to share those. Thanks for that, Vanessa. That's really great to hear where you're up to. Bobby, hello, you're on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I have two screens. I had to remember what I was doing. I might have a delay on my my internet. It's a bit slow today. Chudfix has had its. Sorry, I'm Bobby Hughes. I'm from Devon County Council, so I've got a work hat, but I'm also chair of Chudfix, which is a repair cafe. So I've got two hats on this evening. The repair cafe had its first committee meeting actually last week, which was good since lockdown. So that is our positive thing, and we think we have a plan for meeting, possibly setting up a Chudfix club, which is a sort of small scale, less than 6 people, and we're working on that at the moment. So it's ideas are brewing away, and we're just trying to see if we've got enough volunteers who might be interested in running a very small scale, socially distanced club. So.
I'm interested to hear more about that.
Yes, well, I like I say, I will share it once we've got a bit more detail on the bones, as it were.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. And so was that a meeting in person with real live people?
Yes, there was only 6 of us, which was tricky because there's 9 people in the committee. So we had a bit of a debate about who could go and who couldn't, and we met in the park. There's a very handy ring of seats that are nice and distanced, so we could sit suitably far apart, and we kept an eye on the weather and picked a good night.
Excellent, good.
But the evenings are drawing in now, so actually you can't have your meetings too late, or you have to take a torch.
Yeah.
Go bat watching at the same time.
Ooh, that's a nice idea.
Quite easy in Chudley.
Lots of bats. Brilliant. Thank you, Bobby. That's a good one to hear about as well. And my interest is piqued in terms of how that club might work. So look forward to hearing more about that. Lucy's asked Vanessa a question on the chat about the story competition.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay.
Sorry.
If you click on, if you go to the bottom and you've got
how many entries? Yeah. That's a lot. No, it was because we decisions were a bit slow, I suppose, and schools had stopped and cleared up before we were able to get out the detail. So I think we had about 8 altogether, but they were an age range, some primary and some secondary. So we did manage to get a winner in each group and a second in each group. Yeah, it was a shame really, but I think it was just the children were already at home. They were already struggling with homeschooling, and it's not easy for parents to get their children in the right frame of mind in that circumstance, is it? So yeah, it could have been better, and I think it would have been, but so much has intervened.
It's quality, not quantity, isn't it?
Oh yeah, they were very good. They were very good.
Look at us. Yeah, in terms of keeping the profile of Dawlish Gets Plastic going.
Yeah, well, that's what it did.
Yeah.
That was the main thing for it. And I write a column every month for the Dawlish Gazette, so that kind of keeps everything going as well, because I pick a topic each month and just ramble on about it. But yeah, it's difficult under these circumstances, isn't it? Because not everybody likes Zoom. A few of our group really don't like Zoom. So although we did do quite a lot of Zoom meetings at the beginning, it's had to fizzle out and give people a break, because they really don't feel comfortable with it. They'd much rather meet in person.
Yeah.
Sometimes it brings out things in people that they don't know about until they get on Zoom. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Neil's comment. Bobby, more than 6 allowed at voluntary groups like repair cafes. Yes, it's an interesting one. We're busy interpreting that in terms of voluntary groups or not voluntary groups and the rule of 6. So hopefully more on that from the Resource Futures team this week. Stefan.
Hi.
Hi.
Am I on or am I okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, right, sorry. Well, I'm representing the Blackdown Hills Transition Group. We have bi-monthly Zoom chats. Not a great deal is happening except Repair Cafe, which I'm sort of running from a hub at home. We've decided within the group that apple pressing days we will not hold this year in our 3 normal locations, but one of our members is going to have an apple pressing day using our equipment at their own premises, and just invite local people and friends along, but do the apple pressing just themselves, and they'll keep safe distancing, and then just hand over the juice. I see there's another apple pressing going to happen, I think, on the 2nd of October here in the village that I'm in Blackdown Hill. So people are asking for apples to be brought along in the similar situation there, and then handing out the juice later. Repair Cafe, running from home, from the hub. Really doing very well indeed. We must have done now in excess of 180 repairs.
Wow.
Since June. I've got some really good voluntary repairers. In fact, one of my voluntary repairers, he's crying out for me on every other day to bring in more electrical equipment to repair. So we're repairing really quick, big items like large television sets and items, music centers and things, which we can now repair at home in own sort of workshops and get components which are needed, and complete the repair. And also, I've done a lot of woodwork repairs, jewelry repairs. I've got bicycle repairers. I've got sewing repairers, and all types. And it's been going, really well. And I've covered a huge area. People almost from Exeter, well, actually Tiverton. They've come from Wellington. They've come from Taunton. In a quite a big area all around, further than the Blackdown Hills, which is good. And we have got, yes, a sewing machine repairer, Lucy.
Fantastic. That's the answer to your question, Lucy.
Yes, I have got a very good. In fact, he is the Devon Singer sewing machine repairer. So he's a Devon and Somerset sewing machine repairer. So
Lucy was about to volunteer.
He's done a number of repairs for me already.
Fantastic. That's great. That's very impressive.
I'm long to continue,
just
to say I'm striving for in Hemiock, together with the man sheds, a repair shop. That's my next, that's my next aim.
In Hemiock.
In Hemiock. Brilliant. Because that's where the repair cafe, the Blackdown Hills Repair Cafe is number one.
And are many sheds already active in Hemiock?
No, it's something they want to get together, because there are many things, obviously, for you ladies, Pilates and other WIs and cameo clubs and all these sort of clubs, but nothing for the men. So some of the men that have really.
Men can do Pilates.
Yes, they can. Yeah, but ones that have lost their their partners and what have you, they're a little bit at wit's ends. A few that may have got a little bit of dementia. They want to get them together. So this is the plan. So there is a team of people there that are working at it, but I'm trying to push to bring it along. But it's, because of COVID, it's not really happening. But we have identified a premises, and they've got a team, and they've got some money, I think, that's come from the COVID area. So there is plans, but it's just a matter of when, and I need to chip them along.
Brilliant. Okay, that sounds fantastic. We've got another group down in Teenbridge that are looking to set up a permanent repair workshop as well. So it might be worth putting the two groups together and just seeing whether you've got any ideas you'd like to bounce around together. So all part of the networking. Fantastic, brilliant. Do any of the CAG team, Resource Futures team, want to add anything? Lou, Claire? Any positives to share?
I'm happy to introduce myself, because
please do.
Yeah, sure, no problem. None of you probably won't have met me before. I was about to say hello at the beginning of the Skillshare share back in March, but obviously we know that had to move. But my name's Lou, and I work for Resource Futures, who runs the CAG Devon project, and I'm also the project manager, so I work with Helen and Claire behind the scenes. But I have two hats. I'm also a principal consultant, and I span two of the teams at Resource Futures. One is the circular economy team, and one of them is the behaviour change team. So I work on a number of all sorts of different projects and different shapes and sizes. Probably one of those that is most pertinent to this is one that we've literally just got through to the stage 2 and submitted a bid for. This is working with RAP and the councils across the west of England on a series of interventions around food waste, trying to disrupt how people think about food waste, because they don't necessarily think about it. So it's trying to change habits, which in turn will influence food waste behaviours. And that's targeting quite hard to reach group, families with young children who we know are high wasters. So hopefully we will hear about that at the beginning of November to see whether we are able to implement that. We've had all sorts of COVID shenanigans, but we have put in place measures to sort that out. So hopefully we'll be doing that. And I live in South Devon, so I am just slightly south of the rest of the group. And in my personal life, I am involved in trying to protect seagrass beds near where I am. And so that has latterly involved the really awful task of going to the beach and sitting on it for an hour to survey boats and count how many boats are coming into the area and anchoring or moving about. So that's been absolutely terrible in the sunshine recently. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
You poor thing.
Terrible. Well, nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks, Lou. I've just spotted Mike. Can you hear me, Mike? It's weird because I can't see you. So, Mike, Ricard, are you there?
He's on mute.
He is on mute. And I don't have, I can only ask him to unmute. Are you there, Mike? No, he's not. He's not talking to me.
Oh no, he's unmuted.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. Have you got anything you'd like to say about teen in transition? No? Okay. And Claire, have you got anything you want to add then?
Well, just to say hello to everybody. And in terms of sort of positive things I've been doing is, well, apart from going on holiday recently, I've been doing a lot of work on the new CAG website, CAG Devon website. And what's been great about hearing all of your positive stories is that there's going to be much more opportunity on our new website to share some of those stories and some of the challenges that people are facing and give you some inspiration. So it's really good to hear so much of that happening. So do keep telling us about what you're doing and things you're finding out, things that are going really well, because it'd be lovely to write some of those up and put them on the website. And also if you've got any events coming up, we'll have an events calendar on the new website as well that we want to fill with all your lovely events that you can do, even if they're online. So do let us know if you have any of those.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And we have word from Mike. We have written word from Mike, who doesn't have a mic, which is why we couldn't hear him. Mike has no mic, but still busy running the community garden, but activity generally quite over the sun. So Mike, it's really good to have you with us, even if we can't hear you. So fantastic. I'm really just delighted to hear all of those updates, really, and to me it just kind of reinforces that we can still be doing good stuff even in these really weird times that we're in, and all the challenges that we're facing in terms of even getting together as a group. So well done to all of you, and keep going. So brilliant. Last but very not least, in fact, the main reason why we're all here this evening is Martin, and he's the only person that hasn't spoken yet, but I'm going to pass the floor. I'm going to, open the floor to Martin, who we're just thrilled to have with us from Community RePaint project. For those of you that don't know, and actually a year ago I didn't know this, that Community RePaint Network is actually a project that's delivered again through Resource Futures. So we are indirectly colleagues, so we rarely get together either, twice a year, and that online at the moment. So the other interesting thing that I learned about Martin a couple of weeks ago is that he used to run CAG Oxfordshire, so he knows CAG groups inside out and back to front. So yeah, I now know where to go to pick somebody else's brains about CAG groups and different things that CAG groups might be getting up to, beyond my current posse, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Martin, who's going to tell us all about the delights of what you can do with paint and all those spare cans that are hiding under the stairs or in the shed. And just as a starter for 10, I'd like you to just jot down in the chat how many tins of paint you think you've got languishing around your house at the moment. I'm quite appalled when I looked at, I was saying to Claire, we've been on our house for 14 years and we've still got the paint pots that the previous people left here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to say about at least 10, 7, 2. Claire says she's got none. I'm impressed. I'm going to say 20. I'm appalled, but most of those I inherited, Martin, in my defence. Okay, so while everyone's pondering about how much paint they've got and what they do with it, once they've finished with it, I'm going to hand over to Martin, and without reading through his bio, he's going to share with us himself what he's been up to. So Martin, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Helen, and it's good to see you all, and especially good to see Bobby. I think we met over 10 years ago when I came down to Devon we tendered for the education project and got it, and that was probably Bobby over 10 years ago.
It was over 10 years ago, yeah.
I know, it's still going strong.
Yeah, going really well.
Did something well, yeah, that's good.
Absolutely, brilliant team.
And yeah, the CAG, I line managed the 3 we had for over 4 years, so I was regularly in Oxfordshire, so it's great to see CAG Devon happening, and if it can be as successful as CAG Oxfordshire with those 70 groups in the end, that'd be really good. Anyhow, I'm speaking to you actually from just over the border. So I live in Somerset, in Wells, England's smallest city. So that's where I'm speaking to you from tonight. But I've been with Resource Futures now. Next week, it'll be 17 years, but not doing the same job, but actually developing Community RePaint probably for the last 10 years, etc. So good to see you all. My background is I taught for many years. I taught geography and sociology, and then I went and worked for the YMCA for 16 years in the Midlands and in Somerset, and we ran a whole lot of community projects. When I finished that, I went to work for Wiltshire County Council, and I became a community planner. That wasn't a planner as in the planning, but it was working with different communities. So at any one time, I had 6 or 8 communities, mostly rural. I think at one point I had 5 rural and 3 urban, and working with them to actually help what they wanted to do to develop their communities. So very similar to what CAGs are doing on things. And then came and joined Community Resource Futures, which was called the Recycling Consortium in those days, because 3 organisations came together. And I think when I met you, Bobby, I think we might have still been Recycling Consortium, actually. I'm not sure. We might have just gone to Resource Futures then. Yeah.
Yeah, it might have just become Resource Futures, because
I think so, yeah.
It's about 17 years since I started at Devon County, I think.
Right.
17, 18 years this year, I think. And we started the education programme about a year after I started. So
Okay.
Anyway, yes, it was probably about 15 years ago that you probably were at RF just, I think.
Yes, like that, yeah. Good. Okay, look, I'm going to share my screen because there's a presentation on here. What I'd suggest is that because there's a number of us, if you've got any questions, write them down and we'll take them at the end rather than people interrupting, because I can't always see as well. We've lost Neil, or well, perhaps he's just gone to the loo or somewhere. Anyhow, just going to share my screen. Oh, he's back. Good. Okay, let me just... Can everybody see that? Yeah, good. Okay. Right. So Helen, interrupt if there's a problem and you can't see it. I'll go with you. So here we have it, and more about what that says there. So Community RePaint is a UK-wide paint reuse network. We work in all the 4 countries of the UK, but at the moment we only have 1 or possibly 2 schemes in Ireland, a number in South Wales, and only 3 in Scotland, and the rest are in England. And the whole Community RePaint network is managed as resale by Resource Futures. Now, I'm going to tell you, go a bit of the background in the paint industry, because this might surprise you. So if you look at the roundel on the right-hand side there, the average home has 17 tins stored in cupboards. So if you're under that, then okay, if you're over that, be embarrassed. I'll tell you where that figure came from. But in the UK, there are roughly 320 million litres of paint sold in the UK every year. An estimated 50 million litres goes to waste. Now, this is some research that was done in the mid-2000s, in 2004, by Rebecca Slack from Imperial College London. And she did a survey over 32 weeks with 400 households. But if you want to, you can always pick holes in research. And the big hole I pick in this, that this survey was done only in London and the South East. So therefore, other countries, the UK, the Northwest, Northeast, it wasn't there. So after this, she estimated that roughly 50 million litres of not paint, but DIY products goes to waste every year in the UK. Now, some research that we did a number of years ago would suggest that all the recycling centres, HWRCs, household waste recycling centres, that's what it's called, that roughly 41 million litres of paint is dropped off by the public at recycling centres all over the UK. And our research would say that between 55 and 65% is good enough to be reused. So, and that figure holds up, even though this research was done about 5 years ago, our statistics would say that holds up now. But then in the turquoise box at the bottom, you've got a significant amount of leftover paint from thousands of decorators, maintenance companies, waste contractors and retailers over the UK. Let me just give you 2 examples of that. 2 years ago, Johnston Leyland, one of the main 3 paint manufacturers in the UK, they came to us and they said, we're taking 25,000 litres of paint off many of our store shelves, and we're just going to send it all to be burnt in incineration. However, would you like it? So 20 of our schemes took that 25,000 litres of paint and redistributed it into the community. I've been talking, another example, on and off with the national stores manager for Debenhams. Now you'll say, but Debenhams don't sell paint. No, they don't. But like many of the big retailers, Next, Debenhams, Waitrose, John Lewis, they take in and buy in a lot of paint for their store displays. So I met with the national stores director, a manager, just over 18 months ago at their big Bullring store in Birmingham. And we sat down and he said, okay, this was in November. And he said to me, our PR department have decided that we're not having green as our Christmas colour now, we're having it as red. So we have allocated this store 12 5-litre containers of red paint. So he said, but we've only used 6. I said, fine, so you're keeping 6 to next year. Now we'll throw it away and order more in. So wastage. He then took me into a storeroom and he stood there and he put his hand on the door and I thought he was going to open the door and suddenly loads of paint cans were going to come crashing out. But no, he said to me that in this store is paint that has been accumulated over the last few years by our store managers because they don't want to use their waste budget. And we're now taking that nationally. So we're sorting the waste budget out. Anyhow, I went in this store and I counted 5-litre containers, mostly green paint from past years. I counted 120 5-litre containers of perfectly good, unused, never opened paint. That was one store, and Debenhams have 165 stores or franchise over the UK. So you double that up. You then start to double up Next, who we're trying to work with at the moment from their head office in Leicester, and carry on. And then what you have is in the UK every year at the moment, about 50 million litres of paint in the UK, probably 40 million litres can be reused. So that just gives you an idea of what's going on in the UK every year. Now, disposal options. Paint is difficult and costly to dispose of, and Bobby will know that from Devon, and had a brief conversation with one of the staff there. If I give you just an example here, that some of our schemes around the UK, some of our larger ones, will collect from local authority areas. So at the moment, one of our big schemes in East London collects from 5 local authorities. They collect weekly or fortnightly from 8 household recycling centres. And every household recycling centre, they will charge them £420 a tonne to take their paint. Now, one of those authorities, I won't say which it is, I know that about a year ago, it was costing them £620 a tonne to get rid of their paint. So by our repaint, taking it for 420 means that that local authority is saving £200 a tonne, but that paint is not going for disposal, it's being reused. Now, London is different because anything that has to be disposed of in local authorities in London has to go into the home counties, so there are transport costs. We have a big scheme in Cambridgeshire, and that's costing our scheme is charging the waste management company £230 a tonne. But I know that that waste management company, it's costing them nearly £400 a tonne to get rid of that paint. Bradford, the same. In Merseyside, the same. Merseyside work with Veolia, a waste management company, and our scheme there collects from 9 recycling centres, 6 in North Wales in Flintshire and 3 in Liverpool, and that'll be going up to 4 soon. That's a different arrangement because they charge the local authority £25 every time they go in weekly and collect, and then for every paint can they take away, they charge them 75p a container, regardless of the size of the container, regardless of how much is in there, etc. So it's costly to dispose of paint. And the reason for that is mostly because of the laws at the moment, liquid paint should not be going to landfill. I say should not be because in 2007, there was a landfill ban, which says that no liquid paint, no liquid substances should go to landfill because of leachate and because of the buildup of methane gases. But I have to tell you quite honestly that some local authorities do flout the ban. And because the Environment Agency don't have many staff anymore, or those staff they do have all seem to be working on floods. So that's me being very cynical. And so some local authorities will just hide the paint in black bags. I won't tell you where because it's not fair, but I went to a local authority in the northeast of England last year, and it's a local authority that says, we don't take liquid paints, you have to solidify it at our house recycling centres. So I went in there like a mystery shopper in the boot of my car with 5 tins of paint. And I said to the site staff, I've got some paint here, but you don't take it. And the site manager said to me, these are his words, don't worry, mate, just stick it over there in residual waste. No one will know, we'll take it. So he must say that to all the people of that local authority area. So it's still a problem and it shouldn't be going to landfill, but it does. So the main way to dispose of paint these days is incineration, in energy from waste plants, etc. It's a high temperature, that's why it's such a high cost. But of course, it can be reused. And that's what Community RePaint is all about, is reusing paint and not disposing of it. So the simple concept of repaint is this. You can all read that for yourselves. We talk about surplus and leftover paint and not waste paint, because waste, you know, like in your CAG groups, if you talk about something that's waste, then the public think, what's wrong with it? You wouldn't talk about waste batteries because there's no charge in them. Now, we talk about surplus leftover paint and we talk about repaint being a reuse scheme. Technically, it's not, because the paint has never been used. It's not like furniture. project where the paint has been reused. The furniture has been reused. However, an interesting anecdotal story, an elderly lady went into our scheme in Bury a few years ago, and she said, I'm really interested in your paint because you're saying it's been reused. So where has it first been used? Has it been used on the walls of houses and then been scraped off? Now, when they stopped laughing, they said, that's not such a stupid comment to make, is it? And I know that the research and development team at Dulux Paints are looking to see how, in buildings that are being demolished or whatever, is there any way that they can take the paint off the walls and rescue the titanium dioxide that's in paint, which, like many minerals, is starting to become scarcer in the world. But I just think that's the research and development trying to make a job for themselves, because I can't see how that'll ever happen. However, so repaint is about taking surplus and leftover paint, divert it from the waste stream and redistribute it back into the social market. So an overview of repaint very quickly. It's been going for 27 years. In 1992, there was a research project in Leeds, and B&Q were involved, ICI who Dulux was part of, Environmental Services Association and Leeds City Council. And they wanted to find out how many people had what quantity of paint. So basically, the waste wagon went round many estates in Leeds, picked up the paint, and that's where the figure of 17 full and part full cans came from that study. At the end of that research study, the paint was given to local charities, and that was the start of Community RePaint. And the two first schemes were in Leeds and Ealing in London, and they're both still going. So at the moment, we have 70 autonomous schemes all around the UK. Most are not for profit. 6 are run by local authorities. That's 5 in London, and that's 1 in Nottinghamshire at 4 recycling centres. But they're very small, and more about that in a minute. We manage the whole network. Myself and 2 other staff, we work full time on this. The whole network is sponsored by AkzoNobel, which is a parent company of Dulux. AkzoNobel is a Dutch company in Amsterdam. And Dulux, of course, is a brand name. But they sponsor the network every year, and they give us the money we need, and they see it as part of their sustainability program as well. But we work closely with them, and I meet with one of them online every week, and every couple of months we have a sort of 1 or 2 hour meeting to talk about what they would like us to do more, or hear about what we're doing and how they can support more. All schemes that come into the network sign a service level agreement, which basically gives us a register of which schemes are there. And it just says what we expect them to do and what they expect of all the support we can give, etc. Just interestingly, all the paint companies in the UK, none of them are owned by an English company anymore. So Crown Paints used to be owned by AkzoNobel, but AkzoNobel decided that Dulux was a better model, so they ditched Crown, and Crown had a management buyout, but now they're run by Sherwin-Williams, which is an American company. The other big company is Johnston Leyland, and their paint is made by PPG, and that stands for Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company. So Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company in the US diversified a number of years ago. They're the main companies, and PPG will also make some of the paint, the brand paint, like Wilkinson's paint, Wilco's paint. That's made by PPG. It's very interesting. We've got a high-end company called Earthborn in Warrington, and I went to see the guy a few years ago, and he's got some what he calls eco paint. And I'm always quite cynical when people talk about eco, because they put that label on, but they often don't know what it means. So I said to him, what's your eco paint? And he baffled me with some science. And then I said to him, where's your paint made? And he said, oh, we import it all from Germany. So I said, how does it get to England? He said, road miles. So I thought, eco paint coming all the way from Germany? Fair enough. You might be interested to know that B&Q, all their paint is made in Germany. And it comes by plane or by lorry all the way from Germany, which is interesting. So just, yeah, a bit of a background there. So the network. So, oh, sorry, I realised that I've just used an old map here because we only have one scheme in Devon at the moment. It says there's two. The one we have is a proper job in Chagford, which is right on the edge of Dartmoor, and they do well. The other one was in Torquay, and sorry, I apologise, I've only just seen that. And that was run by a training group there, and it was headed up by a guy called Nigel Williams, who is a reverend. And just to let you know, he emailed me a few weeks ago, and we're having a conversation later this week. He's now involved in a big church in Exeter, and they want to set up a repaint scheme in Exeter, which will be good. He's had experience of doing this, so knows what's involved. I've also had conversations with a scrap store in Exeter in the past, but to date, that's not materialized. I'm just going to, sorry, this little video clip is a guy called Mark Hurst from Community Solutions in Burnley. And they set up a repaint scheme about 18 months ago. And it just gives you an idea of why he set up a repaint scheme. Can you hear that? Okay, I'm stopping that, sorry. There's some problem with the sound. I can hear it, but I can't get you to hear it. But basically, all he's saying is that we work various community projects, and we realized that for many families, they could not afford paint to paint the child's bedrooms and things like that. So they became a paint scheme to take in lots of paint and then resell it to the community at £2 a litre. And more about that in a minute. So our schemes, 2/3 of our schemes around the UK, the 70 schemes, are run by furniture reuse organisations because the client group that they're trying to serve is very similar. We have nearly 10 schemes at the moment that are run by scrap stores. If you don't know what a scrap store is, then they take in business waste and make it available to people working with young children. So primary schools, childminders, nurseries and things like that. They used to be called children's scrap stores. And I was I was up meeting a local authority in Warwickshire not so long ago. And the head of waste management was there. And he said, they're children's scrap stores. What do they do? Do they scrap children? Because they can have mine. And all his staff looked at him and couldn't believe what he'd said. I think they had a different view of their boss after that comment. Some of our big schemes, Cambridgeshire and Bradford, Merseyside, are standalone schemes because they take in enough paint. Our largest scheme at the moment is on the Wirral, part of Merseyside, and last year they did 85,000 litres in a year. They took in 85,000 litres and redistributed that into the community, etc. Local authority, we have 5 schemes in London, and they historically don't work very well. Basically what happens is they take paint in, public bring paint and put it in a container on their site, and then the site staff often move it to another container and let the public just come in and take it for free. I was earlier this year and before lockdown at our scheme in Barnet, North London, and this is a local authority. They took in about 8,000 litres in 1 quarter, because we know the statistics, but they only got rid of just over 1,000 litres in 1 quarter. That's because local authorities, as Bobby would know, are not set up necessarily to distribute materials and things from the website, from the recycling centre. The local authority that works really well is in Nottinghamshire, which I helped set up a few years ago. Veolia, the waste management company, they take the paint, make sure it's okay, and then it can be distributed to the public. Why it works well is because the local authority, the county council, do all the publicity, do all the communications for it. They have open evenings, open afternoons. They can, community groups can have appointments to go in. If it was run just by the waste management company, it wouldn't be that successful, because that's not a waste management company isn't set up to do that. But I just put up at the bottom, this is what the ideal model of a repaint scheme. A third sector organisation, a community group, if you like, working with a local authority or working with a painter and decorator or working with a retailer, taking the paint in and then redistributing it. I've already said that it costs a lot of money for people with paint, trade, to go down the proper route to dispose of paint. So if a community group or a third sector organisation can take the paint, even charging them to take it, but at much less cost, then there's cost savings, but that paint is being reused in the community. But many of our schemes will not charge. They will still take the paint and then redistribute it. So 3 models of collection. So some of our smaller schemes will just take the full tins. And as I said to you, give you an example from Johnston Leyland, from Debenhams, you know, there's lots of full tins of paint around. But most of our schemes will be, and the middle one there, will be taking paint full and part tins. Because if you've got a 2.5 litre tin and it's half full, 1.25 litres, if people want to do a feature wall in their child's bedroom, that's all they want. They don't want to buy a 2.5 litre can or a 5 litre can, then they've got lots of wastage, etc. And then some of our bigger schemes will work with household waste recycling centres, with local authorities, and take the paint, charge them, but it'll be a much lesser cost than it would be going down the commercial trade route. Just an example here, the scheme on the picture on the right is from Bradford. They collect from 6 authorities all over Bradford and in Yorkshire. What happens there is normally the door's closed. The public will come and put the paint outside the container, and then the site staff will put it inside. And if you see, it's all very tidy in there. If the public put it in there, it wouldn't look that tidy. It would be thrown in. And then our scheme comes along twice a week on a Monday and a Thursday, takes the paint away, redistribute, checks it's okay, redistributes it, and makes it available to the public, anything between £1 and £2 a litre. So that means at £2 a litre, a 2.5 litre container would cost someone £5. If that is a coloured container of paint, that would cost at least £15 in B&Q. So we're redistributing it back into the market for 1/3 of the cost of brand new, and there's nothing wrong with the paint at all because it does need to be checked. And that's our Cambridge scheme. Our Cambridge scheme have got the local authority paid for 6 containers on their recycling centres, and these are emptied once every fortnight, and they're 40-foot containers, and in 3 of the sites in Cambridgeshire, they're full of paint. And then, of course, you can get paint from retailers and manufacturers. And at the top there, you'll see the mention of Farrow & Ball. Some of you have probably seen Farrow & Ball or bought it. A 2.5 litre container at the moment in B&Q will cost anything around £40. Very expensive. People think it's superior paint. I won't tell you what I think. But they do mail order all over the world, Farrow & Ball. It comes from Dorset, just near Wimborne, from their factory at the edge of the New Forest. But they have paint that comes back because it's not quite the colour people want, or it's slightly dented. We've had a contract with them for 7 years now, and instead of them sending all their paint that comes back to incineration, they send it to one of our schemes around the UK. And if I tell you, in lockdown this year from January, we've already had 71,000 litres of paint from Farrow & Ball that would have just been thrown away. And what happens is, I know that if Farrow & Ball took it to a local incinerator, it would cost them £210 a tonne. What they do is they contact us sometimes every fortnight, and they'll say, we've got a pallet of paint, roughly 600 to 700 litres, and they will pay for the transport with palletways to any of our schemes apart from Northern Ireland. So it might go to Inverness, which is our northernmost scheme, and they will pay around £50 for the transport. So therefore they're saving money, because they're not paying the £210 to go to incineration. They're very good. So it goes to our schemes. Our schemes can sell it, not for that price, still at £2 a litre. And Farrow & Ball don't want any publicity at all, because obviously if it's publicised, then some local stockists for Farrow & Ball paint won't like it. So we're redistributing that, working with them. And they've had lots of paint coming back through lockdown, etc. All the acceptable materials are, we promote are what you'd normally see in that list. There's a problem sometimes with some waste management companies that some of the gloss and the eggshell, etc., has slightly more solvent in there. But it's still, a lot of it's water-based as well. And a lot of paint, local authority, sorry, what am I trying to say? Waste management companies will treat gloss and eggshell and varnish and wood stain as hazardous. But it's very simple, that anything with hazardous in the UK has to have a hazard symbol on there. And I love to debate with waste management companies when they say, oh, gloss paint is hazardous. And I say to them, show me the hazard symbol on there. And there isn't a hazard symbol. Anything in hazardous in the UK, like bleach and things like that, has to have a hazard symbol, but it doesn't. The reason that waste management companies, and Bobby might prick her ears up at this, the reason that waste management companies will say that some of that is hazardous because they can charge the local authority more. Okay, Bobby? And yet it is not hazardous, not by the technical rule in the UK of what is hazardous. So I spoke to someone high up in a waste management company, had this debate, and when I said, show me how you can say it's hazardous with a no symbol, his words to me were, let's move on, Martin. Exactly, yeah. So these are the unacceptable materials that are hazardous in the UK that we don't encourage our repaint schemes to take, because you have to have a hazardous waste license. And to have a hazardous waste license, it costs, and you need to store the paint separately. Although again, I will debate that sometimes, because there's paint with hazardous substances on in B&Q, but it's there on the shelves. It's not put in a metal container away. So there are discrepancies with the law in this country, but all those things there are the things that are hazardous and our schemes won't touch really. So from June 2017, the bottom two symbols are the ones that supposedly have danger or warning underneath. But in June 2015, Europe, and I don't know what will happen when, you know, next year when we're not in Europe anymore, what will happen then, but Europe decided to change the symbols. It was always those orange symbols. You could look at anything in the UK, bleach or paint, and you only had to look at the orange symbol and you knew it was hazardous. Now you've got on many products in the UK, you've got those diamonds, but those diamonds, red diamonds, are also on products that aren't hazardous. You've then got to look at what the symbol is inside and what the writing is. So it just makes it more complicated. Why they didn't keep the original symbols, I do not know. So how does repaint work? Well, you collect the paint. You then check it that it's all right, and then you sell it or redistribute it. So very simple, like most reuse projects, furniture and food and other things. So just very simply, because obviously, you know, this is a presentation, I can't go everything here. What the most simplest thing that our schemes do is when they take in paint, they open the container. Now this just happens to be a full container of paint that came from Homebase, actually, I think. So the paint, the lid's taken off, the stirred to check it's all right, but it's smelt first as well, because there's something in paint called biocide, which is the chemical that stops bacteria getting in. Well, once paint's been opened, bacteria will get into it. And then if you ever smell paint and it's gone off, a bit like a bad chemistry experiment from school, then that means it's on the turn and it's not good. So if you smell that, you can't do it. But it's stirred, then in number 3 here, we get all our schemes to paint the lid. And then also to put, so that's telling schemes, that's what the paints inside the tin, the colour is. And the reason I say that, when you go to B&Q, you go to Johnson Leyland, you go to Homebase, and there's a mixing machine there. Now, what will happen is the paint is mixed according to a menu, and then a label is put on that tin, which says, it might say something like Harvest Gold, and there'll be no paint color on there, no paint swatch, and there'll be a key number. Now what happens, and some of you might have done that, people go into, let's say, B&Q, and they want this color on the color chart, and then it's mixed, and then they open it, and it's not quite the right color. And many customers around the UK say, I don't want it. And then B&Q are left with it, and they can't do anything about it. So some of that paint will come to our repaint schemes. And of course, if it just says Harvest Gold, well, what's colours Harvest Gold? So by painting the lid, people can see that is the paint, and it's the actual paint. It's not a paint swatch that might not be the same. And then putting in number 4, the label on there, what's on that label? It says when the tin came in and what the volume is and possibly what the cost is. So that's a 5-litre container, you can see. If that was half full, it would be 2.5 litres. So when the public come along and want that paint, they first of all, they can see what the colour is and they know it's 2.5 litres. So it couldn't be any clearer. Now, most of our schemes will have 1 or 4 of these and more of these containers. So full and open containers, part full containers, full consolidated containers. Only one of our schemes in Bradford does that. It's not something that we promote, but they have lots of trainees and they've got the people to do it. What they did there was they took various shades of blue paint, put it all into a 25-litre container, mixed it up, and then put it back into the containers and painted the outside. But you know, it's quite laborious. You need a lot of people to do that. And then the 4th line, the recolor, I'll come back in a minute because that's our own brand as well, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. When our schemes are working with trade, with commercial outfits, local authorities, or with painters and decorators, I've told you already that for someone, a painter and decorator a retailer, to get rid of paint properly, it's costly. And so if they can work with a repaint scheme, and if a repaint scheme says, right, okay, like we do on Merseyside, every can of paint we take will charge you 75p, regardless of the size of the paint and regardless of how much is in there, then I can assure you, let's say a painter and decorator had 100 containers of part-used cans. And our scheme said, right, we'll charge you 75p. So that would be £75 for the 100 cans. I can assure you that if they go down the trade disposal route, that will be more like £150. So it's a cost saving for the trader, for the retailer, but it means that paint is then going to be reused as well. So there are cost benefits and environmental benefits as well, and social benefits. So all this is saying is encouraging our schemes to actually charge. B&Q, Dulux Decorator Centres, Farron Ball won't pay for it. But some of our schemes will know they're getting brand new tins of paint, never been opened, so they will take it because they know they've got an outlet and they know that environmentally it's a good thing to do. So recolor are remanufactured paints. A few years ago, we upgraded 2 of our community repaint schemes on Merseyside and Cambridgeshire. It meant they could take in more paints and they could produce up to 200 litres of a similar colour. This is through a licence we have with another paint manufacturer and Dulux. But as part of the sponsorship of the network, Dulux pay for that licence. And I can tell you, it's many thousands of pounds. And that's a great way that Dulux, as part of their sustainability programme, want to support repaint. So we don't pay for that license, but I can tell you it's in 2 figures. It's a few £1,000s. So what happens here is our 2 schemes will take in lots of paint. They will decant it. So let's say they're making a brown. I will show you there. Those are all of the colours and variations of that we produce at the moment. But our schemes, they will take in up to 200 litres, decant it. So let's say they're making a brown. They will take in blues and oranges and browns, put it all in a big container of 200 litres, mix it all up, add biocide, check if there are any bugs in there, that's all killed. They will check for the thickness of the paint and check for the alkaline and acidity content, and then put it into new containers. Those are the containers, etc. It looks good. And that was in North Wales, actually, a hospice shop who took in a lot of paints, and they painted the palette it came on, they painted the chair it came on. And this paint is available. We sell it online as well, and it's available to repaint schemes all around the country to buy it in, or community organs to buy in and then sell. So if it's white or magnolia, can buy it for just over £1 a litre, which is nothing. If it's coloured paint, can buy it in from about £1.20 to £1.40. There is transport on top of that, but many of our schemes will then sell it for £2.50 a litre. So that means that they're selling roughly 5 litres of coloured paint for £12.50. That in a retailer is over £20. So again, that's paint that's been saved from disposal, and it's making available to people in the community, and certainly people who are on low incomes. The other good thing, it's available to community groups. So online, we have minimum order of 60 litres. Now, only today, I saw one of the orders came in from a gymnastics centre in Glasgow, and they wanted 120 litres, and they said, we cannot afford to go to B&Q and buy it. But we realised that coming to Community RePaint, we can paint the whole of our gymnastics centre for a fraction of what it would cost us. So again, that's what we're doing, and again, available for communities to buy in. And last year we sold 85,000 litres of this throughout all the 4 countries of the UK, mainly to community groups for their buildings and community centres. So we've talked about getting paint in, we've talked about processing it, checking it's okay, and then selling it. So we talk about selling it on the social market, and you can see all those things. A growing area is housing associations, and our scheme in Liverpool will now service 6 housing associations, and they do that by buying in recolour and selling it to housing associations in redecorating boxes. And the housing association is making a cost savings, and RePaint is servicing all their tenants. How that happens is that the housing association will email our scheme and say, we want you to provide a decorating box to Mr. and Mrs. whatever in their 1-bedroom flat or their 5-bedroom house. And our scheme there, if it's a 5-bedroom house, they will charge the housing association £120, but it costs the RePaint scheme about £40 to do that. It's a cost saving for the local authority, and our RePaint scheme will make some money which they plough back into the scheme. But a number of our schemes will work with the housing association on vouchers. So it started with Worcester a few years ago. Worcester Community Housing Trust worked with Worcester Community RePaint scheme. Prior to that, when a tenant went into a new flat, they didn't go in and decorate, because many housing associations won't do that now, because traditionally they would send their decorators in to paint it magnolia. And a lot of and they realized that within a few weeks or months, many of the people moving in would repaint it again, their own colors. So within a year, that flat or that accommodation had had 2 coats of paint. So a bit of a waste. So the Worcester Community Housing Trust, they used to give vouchers to Homebase and B&Q. and they would give them 4 vouchers for 2.5 litres of paint. And if it was coloured paint, it could be at least 15 pounds. So that meant the Housing Association got a bill for 60 pounds for the paint. They stopped that, Worcester, and they came to our repaint scheme, who were saying, you can have 2.5 litres for £5. So the bill was £20 to the Housing Association rather than £60. And again, it was paint that was saved from disposal. So very, very good. So a growing area. But most of our schemes, basically, because there are millions of litres of paint, will sell to anybody who needs it. But certainly those on low income or in social or community need, it's tremendous. These are the decorating boxes, and I'm just going to pause it because again you can't see, hear that. Sorry, and this is the one from Burnley, and basically what they do is, well, if you see it, I'll talk it through to you. No, I can't even go. I've lost it now. But basically, they put in there 4 containers of paint. They put in rollers, paint brushes, and a masking tape, and a dust sheet as well. And they will make that available for housing associations to buy on contract. I'm just going to show you some repaint schemes around the UK. So this is our one in Hull, above the premises that they operate it from. Very clear, very good. Tells you what's going on when they're open, etc. This is the scheme that the guy who, if you could you could hear the video, this is what was going on in Burnley. Now, if you see at the forefront of the picture, Dulux Trade, that's diamond white paint that will often retail for £30–35. Now that was given to our repaint scheme from painters and decorators, brand new paint. My argument is that the painter and decorator probably should have left it with a member of the public, because it's, if they've paid for it for their house and it's left over, they should have left it. But still, that painter and decorator, if they'd taken it down the trade route, it would have cost them lots of money. So that came to the repaint scheme, and you can see it's as good as new. So 5 litres of paint, someone would come in, would pay £10 for that rather than £30 normally. That's our recolor in our scheme in Brentwood, a furniture project, and they just buy in the recolor and sell it. That's a housing association that is a repaint scheme in Rochdale. That was our scheme in Preston, very small scheme run by a community group, no staff, and they got access to a shopping centre, and they were allowed to sell it all in there for 6 months rent free. That's our scheme in Cambridgeshire. Now, all the paint you can see are part full cans, etc., that I told you about. That's a scheme, a Christian organisation in Loughborough. That was just before they set up. They collect paint from Leicestershire, one recycling centre in Leicestershire, because Leicestershire say to people, if you've got paint, you can only take it to one recycling centre. That's not great, because for some residents, that means a 45-mile round trip. So they don't go. So what they do is they then put it in black bags, hide it in black bags, put it in the residual waste at their recycling centre. So unfortunately, it's going to landfill or it's going to incineration when it shouldn't be doing. You can see what it looks like painting the lids, etc. And then a lot of our schemes, again, that's in Cheshire, but they will buy in rollers, paintbrushes and things like that. And that's an income generation, because they can still sell it cheaper than a big retailer, but they will make about a 60% markup. So they can make money to finance their community organisation, but still offer it to members of the public at a cheaper rate when alongside the paint. And just to give you an idea of paint being used, a few years ago, the Sun newspaper asked for 20 community organisations around the UK to nominate a project, etc. So this was a sports centre in in Featherstone in Yorkshire. The guy in white was a professional decorator. The guy near the camera was a volunteer. So the Sun paid for these 20 community organisations, and they came to repaint for some of them. And being the Sun newspaper, I'm not being cynical, well I am really, I thought they'd want it all for free, but they didn't. They paid the repaint scheme for the paint, so that was really good. And the Sun newspaper talked all about community repaint, which is great. This is in Bradford. Bradford, if any of you know, is got a system of walkways and subways under the roundabouts and everything. And the local authority came to our scheme just over a year ago and said, if we pay you for a community artist, will you use your paint to actually paint all the walkways? So this is one of the walkways, and it's all reused paint or surplus and leftover paint. And apparently people said, yeah, it's really brightened up the walkways. What they did say was, unfortunately, it's not taken the smell of, you know, people deciding to urinate there at night and things like that, as they do in places like that, unfortunately. But it looks really good, and that's just an example of paint being used. This is the Selby Trust in North London, in Haringey, Tottenham, and a few years ago they were given this community facility by the local authority, and they decided it needed a makeover, and they worked out a budget, and they said, right, buying brand new paint and getting someone in will cost £960. That was only for part of it. We don't have the money. So they said, we went to our repaint scheme in East London, and that took paint from the recycling centre and made sure it was available, and they bought everything that they needed. Instead of £960, it cost them £140. It regenerated that building, and they had a makeover weekend where they got volunteers and everything into paint. So again, just an example of paint that no one wanted, surplus and left over, and it can regenerate a building. This was again, someone in their house was doing a wall using paint. That's the children's playground in Staffordshire. Must have taken ages to do that, but it brightened up the playground. This was, I thought these were real hands at first, painted. Again, someone using just partful cans of paint because they wanted to do a feature wall in a house, in a bedroom, and they just wanted little bits of paint. Same that, there was a graffiti artist who again was doing a mural. This is our scheme in Loughborough. They do furniture, and they use a lot of the paint for recycling, upcycling furniture. Just to give you an idea, nearly there. Last year we had 65 repaint schemes. We're just over 70 now. Collected nearly 500,000 litres of paint, redistributed that to people across the UK, added colour to the lives of over 337,000 people, and 110 people worked on repaint, and 120 people volunteers to run the schemes. Some of our small schemes are only run by volunteers, not by employees at all. There are 8 main benefits of repaint. These are the 4 main benefits, and you can see them for yourself. Environmental benefit, diverting paint. There's economic benefits and social benefits as well. And then 4 more benefits, I'll let you read them. These are more local authorities. Why B&Q getting involved with us? Because they see it as their corporate social responsibility, and the same with Farrow and Ball as well. And these are sort of obvious really, but you know, 8 main benefits of repaint. And then all our repaint schemes, as I say, there are 3 of us working full time, and yeah, we provide day-to-day support. So at the moment, we've just set up a new scheme in Lowestoft during lockdown and afterwards. So normally I would go and spend time with them, but you know, I've had various online meetings with them. We set up a scheme with a local authority, with a housing association in Northampton last year. And to set it up, it took a long time, various problems, and they had a shop, which they got rent free from the local authority, and they set up a paint shop. But I spent 5 half days with them helping to set it up. So we give all the support to schemes in setting it up. And one of the main things we'll do is where we can broker deals, where we can work. At the moment, I'm talking with Next to see how some of their paint from Next, from their paint displays, can come to our repaint schemes, etc. And one of the things that we'll do is, two of my colleagues, Dan and Debbie, will work a lot on PR marketing, because some of our schemes and community organisations do not have the skills for PR marketing, do not have the time. So we will write press releases for schemes, sometimes distribute it to local newspapers. We will actually, at the moment, we're working with 3 schemes where we manage their website, we manage their Facebook and Twitter for them to help them in all that. But we produce things that we can give schemes free. So on the left there, it says, do you need paint? That's an A5 card. And on the back, it says we can provide you with paint. In that box, schemes can put their own address details. We can give all our schemes all this totally free. So the sponsorship money we get from Dulux, we use to provide materials that we can give out to repaint schemes totally free. And then a whole host here of posters and things like that that we'll tailor-made. And those schemes that want to laminate them haven't, we will laminate them and we will send them out to them. So again, we can do a lot of PR and marketing help for people, etc., right across the country. And the biggest asset we have is, and if you haven't looked at it, I encourage you to do, is our website. I'm very pleased with this because we get just nearly 2,000 hits a week, which I think is amazing for this. So really pleased. And during lockdown, it went up to 2,500 hits a week on average. The most important page on there is the one that says I need paint. So if someone clicks on I need paint, then what they will do is they'll come up with a page that you can see, and where it says on the left find schemes by location, they'll put their postcode or their town in there. Now if I was in Burnley or within 25 miles of Burnley, this is what I would see. Our scheme comes up, all details about our scheme, and at the bottom there it says website. And if they click on that website, that goes to the host organization, because most of our repaint schemes are part of another organization, so we're actually promoting that organization as well. And those where, if they have leftover paint to get rid of, they click on I have leftover paint, and then they have 2 options: if they're a homeowner or if they're trade. If they're a trade, they have a form to fill in, and then that will come through to us. And if that tradesman or retailer or whatever is near one of our schemes, we'll put them in contact with that scheme, and then the scheme will work with them to take their paint. If they're a member of the public, they'll come up, and again, they can put in their postcode or their town or village details, and what will come up is the nearest house or recycling centre to them that will take paint. So not all the house or recycling centres in the country, 600 are on there, but only the ones that will take paint that goes to be reused from one of our schemes. So in summary then, Community RePaint ticks what we call the triple bottom line. There are environmental benefits, there are economic benefits to the consumer and to the paint industry, and then of course there's social benefits, because it's providing access to affordable paint, and for those that employ people as well, it gives job opportunities. Those are my contact details. So if anybody wants to, later on, take the phone number down, please do. I'm going to stop sharing this in a minute, so you have to be quick. Or my my email on there, etc. Okay, so I've talked enough now. So hopefully I've captured what's important. But certainly it would be good if there are any questions, and if this was something that with your CAG group that you want to do on a small scale or to get bigger, I'd love to talk to you, and when I'm allowed out by our boss in Resource Futures, than to come and meet with you, and but online as well, and see how there are possibilities. I've talked about some of the models, but some of our schemes operate other models as well. So at the end of the day, all Community RePaint is about is knowing there's a lot of paint out there that's going for disposal. How can it be rescued? How can it be reused? And we would work on models that would suit the organisation. So if you're working in Tiverton, Crediton, the village, things like that, and you know, possibly not retailers, but there could be many painters and decorators and people like that in the area who are looking for an outlet. Okay, why are they looking? Because they want to save money. They don't want to pay the trade cost. Fair enough. But, you know, that's something we could work with you to see how a model for your community could be brought about. Anyhow, Helen, I'll shut up there. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Well, I'm sure everyone will join with me to say thank you very much, Martin. Absolutely fascinating. I knew about 5% of what you shared with us this evening. So absolutely brilliant. So you've got a little reaction if you want to share. So massive appreciation. Thank you. We have got some questions coming up in the chat, and I'm just going to try and I'm just conscious of time. Amalgamate quite a few of them. So there's quite a few questions around setting up schemes, and it's lovely to hear you talk about actually you'd help set up a scheme to suit that community or that, you know, the focus of people in that locality. But there were questions around, is there a kind of minimum size of premises or a minimum size of communities to sustain a scheme? Let's start with that.
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends at what level. You know, obviously, if one was going to work with a local authority, then you're talking about paid staff and big. But if you take the notion that potentially in your community, however big that is, small, there is surplus and leftover paint. Now, I know, you know, like in Devon, people are encouraged, if they've got a material they don't want, to take the recycling centre. However, however, it could be taken to another drop-off point, etc. You know, in the community. I mean, there are licenses in the Environment Agency. A lot of our schemes will have a waste carriers license, and then they will have exemption licenses, a U8 and an S2. However, for those schemes that don't have them, we hold a multi-site license with the Environment Agency. And as long as we list them, so we hold those licenses. So small schemes that don't do that can come under our umbrella, etc. And U8 is using waste for its specified purpose. And I haven't recently, but the Environment Agency used to have on their website Community RePaint as an example. And S2 is storing paint, storing it, etc. But again, it's the licenses. So it could be that in a community, you could be saying, look, we have a point, bring your paints and we can redistribute it. What you'd need to do though is to check it all, because sadly, there is the minority who upset things for everybody else. And there are those people who would just bring along all their rubbish as well. And then you'd have a waste bill. But as long as you bring things along and then, you know, check that it's okay. And if it's not, those people are prepared to take it away, then fine. So it could work like that. It could work. And then it could become even, you know, even bigger. I've just seen on there, someone talked about a mobile repaint service. Absolutely. If you did that, within Resource Futures, our chief executive would love me. He's been going about this for years.
He'd love us too.
About transporting things around the country and everything, which the principle works. The problem is when you start getting into some of the detail, but it could work.
It's a great idea. I do love that idea. Yeah. Fantastic.
Someone's put on here, does this Enrico scheme still exist at hospice care, Exeter? Sadly not. They bought in a lot of recolor. What happened was that the guy who was really enthusiastic then left. And like so many things, it's down to individuals and it shouldn't be. But they bought a lot of and sold it. At one point, we had all around the country, we had about 15 hospice shops that were selling recolor paint. Yeah.
Okay, just coming back to the setting up, and you've touched on it a little bit in terms of training, kind of training up volunteers to run a scheme, and maybe any startup grants to cover startup costs, kind of what's available there.
We don't have any money to give. However, we give it in kind and in support. You know, in terms of publicity and all that, and expertise and everything. So it'd be working locally, as many schemes do, to you know, local, if there are still many around, well, there are a few in the country, grant making bodies, etc. And especially when there are local trusts who really want to support something locally, and they see that it's their community that's benefiting, they'll do that. Yeah, so no more to say on that. One of the other things, Lucy's just put, do schools count as community groups? Could a PTA buy paint from the school? They do. During the, just after lockdown, a primary school in Devon bought 600 litres of paint. The headmaster said, we've got 2 caretakers, they're doing it, and we're having parents who are coming in to paint the classrooms. They had 500 litres of white and 100 of a light blue. And I can't remember, but we have done some primary schools in Devon who have bought it in. Yeah, so yeah, schools will do that. Not secondary schools so much, but many primary schools, and certainly before in June and July, just before the summer holidays, bought a lot in all around the country. So yeah, that's possible.
Great. I'm going to throw it open now and say, does anybody want to unmute themselves and ask a question rather than it just being me? Bobby, go for it.
It wasn't really a question. I just wanted to say that we could advertise the repaint through our bulletin to schools. So if you've got some PR material we can include, that'd be quite a good thing. Yes, Lucy's thinking the same. We think very similar.
I'll send you something, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, particularly like you say, probably towards the end of the school year is probably the best time to do it. But any time, yeah, we can put it in the bulletin and advertise it. That's an email that goes to every school in Devon.
Fantastic. Okay, Lou, you had a question.
Sorry, I actually think that you've possibly covered it, Martin. I just said, what are the conditions that you need in an area for a scheme to actually thrive?
Well, you need the enthusiasm, first of all, of people who get it and thinks, wow, this material of paint, so much wastage, how can we stop the wastage and put it to good use? So how can we collect that and then redistribute it, etc., in the community? So, you know, if you've got the willingness and enthusiasm, and you know there's no shortage potentially of paint, it depends how big your catchment area and how big you're working in. But it could be that, you know, 2 or 3 CAGs could work together on this to cover a wider area, because what we find in our schemes is when people know about it, it flies off the shelves. And because the cost is quite low, if you go into a big retailer, white is usually on offer, 10 litres for £10, and our repaint schemes, it's about that. But coloured paint, which is mostly is high. And if you're charging £2 a litre, as we advocate, some schemes only charging £1 a litre, £2, 5 litre, 2.5 litre container, £5, £15 in B&Q. So it's a cost saving. So people are willing to perhaps drive a few miles to do this, especially if in this day and age now, when the whole reuse and recycling bandwagon is gathering speed, if it's publicised well and people thinking, this is paint, nothing wrong with it, but it's been saved from disposal, yeah, I'm going to buy in for that.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's lots of opportunity in different pockets around Devon, probably.
Stefan, did you want to use? you had a question. You typed a question in.
Yeah, Martin, if an area was wanting to purchase an amount of paint and weren't really sure how much they needed, and when they were painting the area, they ran out of what they purchased from initially, can you guarantee the paint of the same shade on your recolor?
95%. But the other thing, Stefan, is on our website, we have a tab at the top which says help and support.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on there, there are 2 lines of 3 articles and 3 articles. And on the second line is a paint estimator tool. And there are 5 things of how you estimate what you need. And it's based on recolor, because then when it talks about measuring square meterage, and it says for every square meter, you need 12 litres of recolor. And so that is pretty accurate. And we worked on that with Dulux to make sure it was an accurate paint estimator. And I think the article says, buying too much paint, ?
Okay. Right, thank you.
Ah, Bobby's on fire tonight with her ideas about paint. I love this. Has this ever happened anywhere else, Martin? A jumble trail for paint?
I just saw that, I know. Well, why not?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the first one in Devon to do a jumble trail for paint?
I mean, people talk about, and Bobby's mentioned about the swap, bringing the swap, and that's fine. You just have to be obviously very careful how it happens, because the danger is, all right, if you have a swap shop, normally it's good. With paint, there is a danger of spillage. So, you need to be careful with that, really. I mean, all the environmental agency things is when you're working with paints, you don't have I forgot what it is, but there should be no water course. I think they say something like 100 meters away, which is a bit ridiculous, because if you did spill the paint, I'm not sure it's going to trickle 100 meters unless it's downhill fast. And that's why if you're ever working in a warehouse or something, a lot of warehouses have drains in the middle of the floor, you've got to make sure you've got a bunded area around them to make sure that it doesn't go down. But no, that's the only thing, a swap, you just got to be careful about spillage and things. But again, all these things are there. The principle is right, and there are ways around it and ways. I'm a great believer in obstacles and barriers are there to be overcome and not be, like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think that's really good philosophy. Claire, fire away. You've got a question about storage and premises.
Yeah, so I just wanted to see if you had any particular tips about the premises you need to sort of prepare the paint, check the paint, that kind of thing, and how much storage one might need to run a scheme, or anything you would say about, you talked about licensing, but is there any things that people need to think about in terms of safe storage of the paint?
We could help with. They don't apply. Very easy to apply. They are free and they're exemption, and it'll take you 10 minutes on an Environment Agency's website, and I could talk people through that. So that's great. Some of our small schemes, I'm thinking one up in Morpeth in Northumberland, very small, just run by volunteers, and they've just got a shipping container on some land, and they've had a trader who's put some electricity into it, and they've just got shelves down each side, and then they open it up 3 times a week. So it could be like a shed or something like that. I mean, shipping containers, if you can get the right contacts, certainly docks and things like that, and of course in Devon, they're loads of them, and sometimes they're happy if you don't take them off your hand. Mini Mobile will give Mini Mobile, which is the name of the company, these small blue ones, they will give community groups 6 months free. 6 months free mini mobiles, and one of our schemes has had it for 3 years because Mini Mobile has forgotten about it. And they said, should we remind them? And I said, no, not at all. Don't remind them. If they're stupid enough to forget that, then forget about it. But the thing, I mean, our scheme in Rushden in Northampton, they contacted a container company, got the container free. All they had to do was pay for the transport to the site. And it was about 10 miles, but they got it free because this company had so many containers, they wanted to get rid of them. So a big shed, something like that, you know, you could have, and, you know, if you've got someone, I think it was, yes, Stefan was talking about the repair cafe and doing things at home or having things in a shed, you know, again, in your community, working with the parish council, telling the parish council what you want to do.
Can I ask a quick question?
Fire away.
Martin, how far are you getting along with the Exeter one? Is that just a initial discussion, or is it a
yeah,
serious
I've got to
project?
talk Nigel Williams. It is. I've got to talk with him, and I think we got a call for this week or next week.
Okay.
That we haven't. He just came back to me during lockdown, and then you know, like these things, it hasn't mobilised, and he said, "Look, we want to set it up. I know what to do and everything." And this is a big church. I forgot what it's called. It begins with C. I can't remember. I should have looked it up, but I haven't. And they've got a lot of community projects, and he's the second pastor. They've got 2 or 3 pastors. It's a big church. I think it begins with C.
Well, let us know if it, you know, has wings.
We'll do.
We'll be
Yeah,
interested to know and keep tabs and help if we can somehow.
Yeah, because Scrap Store were really keen a few years ago, and then that all went quiet, and that was partly because it was a trustees, and like these things, 2 trustees moved on, and you know, yeah.
Mm.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, I'm curious to finish off with people's thoughts on, particularly from the CAG groups, but not only, as to whether their brains are going and can perceive, you know, whether they could see a project working in their community or not. So, yeah. Anybody got any thoughts on whether they could see a repaint scheme operating in their locality? Vanessa?
Yeah.
Neil put his hand up.
Yeah. Okay.
It'd be
Vanessa, then
good.
Neil.
It'd be good in any community, really. It's just a question of who's in the best position to run it, and you know what they can use as premises as well. So yeah, you've got it needs to be sort of each etched out to everybody in the community rather than just me.
You're right. The other thing just reminded me, certainly painters and decorators, certainly if they think something's going to operate in their community that's going to benefit, they'll support it. But we had a retailer, a paint offer retailer from Exeter last year. And what they ended up doing, they drove the van to Proper Job in Chagford and back, and they said to reuse, but they realised that economically it was still going to be cheaper for them to do that, to send their delivery driver, you know, how far it is from Exeter to Chagford and back, than disposing it down the trade route. So again, the potential is to get paint from other parts of Devon into your community, because, you know, with the right contacts and things like that. One of the things sometimes when a scheme's setting up, we encourage them to do an internet search. And I know we've just done one for a new scheme in Bristol. We've got 3 schemes in Bristol, but they, from where they were, they did a 10-mile radius of where they were on the internet. We did it for them, painters and decorators, retailers, construction companies, and they came up with 35 within a 10-mile radius. Now that was a city, but, you know, again, if you're not far from a big, you know, Tiverton, Crediton, Exeter, there may be people in there who are willing you know, will say, fine, if you can reuse this and it's not costing us anything, just the mileage, we'll bring it to you. So what I'm trying to get over is there's all sorts of possibilities, and we would work with you to do that, because what we want to do and what Dulux want to do as sponsors is see more paint not going to waste. More paint collected, more paint distributed. That's the strap line, basically.
Yeah. Brilliant. Neil.
Yeah, so we'd love to have a scheme here in Tiverton, or possibly share a scheme with some of the neighbouring areas. The stumbling block at the moment would be finding a venue and people to staff it. There's a number of our other projects where we would also like to have a location where we could store equipment and so on. But yeah, it's the main stumbling block, I think, at the moment. But we can certainly promote the repaint scheme.
Great.
Brilliant. I've got a question from Mike. Have you got any materials that he can display in his shop window? I think he's got a hardware store, to advertise repaint's existence, and then invite interested people to set one up.
We could put something together for him. Where is Mike? I know Mike is silent, but you're his.
He hasn't got a microphone.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a problem. Where's Mike from?
He's Teignmouth.
Oh, neighbour.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, you're messaging just to me. If you click on your the arrow down next to your name when you're messaging, you should get a choice to message to everyone in the meeting, and then everyone can see your message. But yeah, he's in Teignmouth, so coastal town.
Teignmouth.
Teignmouth.
Teignmouth, right? Okay.
Teignmouth.
Teignmouth.
Yeah.
Fine. I mean, what I would say is, it'd be good to have a conversation on the phone, Mike, because you know you've got a microphone there.
Yeah.
I'll speak to him, and you know we can do something tailor-made for that and talk about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Anybody else got any final thoughts? Yes, Lucy, fire away, and then Claire.
To Neil, a few thoughts about places where we could possibly host, which isn't too far from Tiverton. So I've got two people to talk to. We've got an antiques village, which was Fagin's, which is on the old E38. Be a perfect place to have like one of those little containers you were talking about, Martin. That'd be great. Yeah, and I can see it would be quite easy to administer. This is me giving myself more work again.
Good job, Lucy.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to talk to working with Sustainable Tiverton and to talk to my contacts at the Antiques Village and see if we can put something there.
That'd be really exciting.
Question about leaflets as well.
Ooh.
So I'm going to a school business managers conference, hopefully, which will run in May next year. I wondered if there were leaflets I could take to them to promote Recolour. Yeah.
I mean, you've got my details. What I'd say is email me or contact me, and Helen's got them if you haven't.
Yeah.
And with you, Lucy, and with Neil, you know, happy to have another Zoom talk with you and other, you know, other people, other colleagues, you know, to actually say, well, okay, what's possible? How can we do it? So, you know, just, yeah, I mean, you got it. But my email address is martin.pearse, martin.pearse, and it's up there on my, Pearse is spelt unusual. And yet I was told Pearse is a Devon, Somerset original, from Devon and Somerset, but it's Pearse. And it's then at resourcefutures.co.uk. Same addresses, and Claire and Lou.
Thank you.
Great.
Not resources futures, as someone from B&Q wrote me the other day. Resources futures. Wonder if it didn't get to me.
Well, Lucy, could you keep us in the loop on that one, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Claire and Bobby, I'm just conscious of time and we're bang on 9 o'clock. So Claire?
Oh no, I was just pointing that out that Lucy was had a hand up.
Okay.
I was pointing at Lucy. Well, she might be up there in your case.
Bobby?
I was just going to ask what the next step was if somebody wanted to set one up, but I think you answered that because it sounds like it's to contact you.
Yeah, I do. I've forgotten the name of the lady in your department that I had a conversation
Catherine, probably.
with.
Yeah. Catherine
Perhaps I need to
Causley.
pick that up with her again.
Yeah.
If any of the people here want to pick up with you, then if they email you directly, and if you could copy us in, that would be really helpful, just so we've got all the dots joined up. That would be really good.
I will just, let me just share my screen again. Hold on. So those are my details on there. Yeah, my own, not the RePaint app. That's our general one, but my phone number and email address on there.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm sure I'm echoing everybody else's thoughts when I say a massive, massive thank you to Martin. It's
No problem.
a heck of a lot. Hugely inspiring, lots to think about, and yeah, I've been looking at the walls around while you've been talking. I think I want to get paintbrushes out as well. So you've given me itchy feet to get painting as well. So now I know where to go for my paint. It's another good excuse to head to proper job until we have something a little more local, maybe up the road towards.
It would be easy to set it up. So I'd love to talk further, you know, with you, because we've got nothing. We've got a small scheme in St Austell and Truro, and then Chagford, but you know, we want bigger schemes in all the counties. Yeah, let's
see what we can do over the next year or so to change that a little bit.
Good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been
pleasure. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for coming for our first green drinks. If you have any ideas for any others, then do let us know. But otherwise, yeah, take care, and great to have you with us. This has been recorded, and we'll upload it onto our YouTube channel, and I'll send you all the link. Yeah, great. So thank you. That's been a pleasure to spend the evening with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.